Aladdin and the Wonderful Lamp. Most respected guests, I bid you welcome. I am Scheherazade, the Sultana of the great empire of Persia and the Indies, and perhaps even more important, a teller of tales. Some years ago, my husband, the Sultan, was betrayed by an unfaithful wife. In his anger and grief, he vowed to marry a new wife every day and execute her the next, so she could never betray his love. I went to the palace and offered myself to the Sultan. On our wedding night, I began to entertain him with a tale, a story filled with the mystery and amazement which everyone loves to hear. He became so interested in the story that he wanted to hear the end, but the night was over. He decided to spare my life for one more night so that he might hear the end of the tale. I was not enamored with the thought of dying the next morning, so as soon as I finished the first tale, I began another. And so it went. Every night, the end of one story and the beginning of another. This went on for, can you believe it? 1,001 nights. On that night, the Sultan laughed and told me that somewhere among all the stories filled with magic, courage, and love, his anger had faded away. He had fallen in love with me, and that was the end of all the marriages and executions. But it was not the end of the stories. So it is, honored guests, that my husband asks me to entertain you with a tale of wonder and magic. This is the story of a young man who thinks he wants adventure. His name is Aladdin, and this is the tale of how he came into possession of the wonderful lamp. Once long ago, in the great city of Samarkand, there lived a tailor and his wife. The tailor worked long hours, but times were hard, and few patrons came to his tiny shop. The small sums he earned were barely enough to support his wife and their adopted son, Aladdin. Though he loved his parents, Aladdin was a trial to them, spending far too much of his time yearning after adventure, and not nearly enough learning how to be a tailor. Alas for him, his father took sick and died, and was followed a short time later by his wife. Aladdin was left alone. He tried for a time to get work with the other merchants and shopkeepers nearby, but with no luck. Everyone knew Aladdin, of course, and what a trial he had been to his father. No one was willing to let him come and work for them, for they did not trust him to stick by his work. Things looked very sad indeed for Aladdin. One day, as he had reached his very last small sum of money, Aladdin wandered through the city streets looking for something to eat. He came upon a stall of a fruit vendor and decided to buy something sweet and delicious, for he had no idea when he would have another meal. There on the counter were 3 perfect, luscious fruits, an apple, a pear, and an orange. Aladdin looked at them, trying to decide. Which should he choose, a crisp, crunchy apple, a sweet, tender pear, or a juicy, tangy orange? Which would you choose? Aladdin's eyes fell on the glowing, juicy orange. He could already taste the sweet, tangy fruit. He reached into his pocket and discovered a hole. His last precious bit of money was gone, lost somewhere in the streets. Poor Aladdin. He was so hungry he felt desperate. Without thinking, he reached out and picked up the orange. Suddenly, the merchant looked his way. Seeing Aladdin's ragged clothes, he cried out, "Stop, thief!" Aladdin took to his heels and ran into the market, threading his way through the narrow streets, streaking past the stalls and darting in and out of the crowds of people. In the distance, he could hear the merchant and others chasing and calling after him. The punishment for stealing, even when you were starving, was terrible. Just when he had almost reached the end of his strength, he saw a cluster of jasmine bushes against a wall. He darted behind them and crouched down, gasping for breath. He made himself as small as possible, waiting until the sound of the pursuing footsteps faded. As his breathing quieted, he became aware of a soft rustling sound quite nearby. He looked up and saw, much to his surprise, a grilled window set into the wall. Someone was on the other side of the window. He started up and made ready to run when a soft voice came from the other side of the grill. "Don't run. I won't give you away." Aladdin's astonishment was complete. "Who are you?" he demanded, "and why should you help me?" "My name is Sashir," said the soft voice, "and I would never see anyone be made a prisoner if I could help it." "But why should you care?" Aladdin asked wonderingly. "Because I am myself a prisoner," Sashir responded. Then she added curiously, "What did you do that so many were chasing you?" Aladdin drew himself up. "I stole something." "What did you steal?" she asked. "An orange. I had lost my money and—" "An orange? Is that all?" "It is enough to put me in prison, maybe cost me my right hand," he reminded her grimly. "I should not have done it, but hunger can make a person do foolish things." He was immediately sorry that he had said that, not wanting to confess his weakness. But the soft voice on the other side of the wall was very kind. How terrible. Here. Through the grill came a small piece of very white bread, followed by a piece of succulent meat. One by one the pieces of food were pushed through the grill, and Aladdin ate them with a kind of desperate greed. When he was finished, he realized that perhaps she thought him greedy. "I should not have eaten all that. Perhaps you are hungry." "I am hungry only for freedom," she said. "What have you done that you are a prisoner?" Aladdin asked. "I was born a princess." "A princess!" cried Aladdin, backing away from the grill. "Please, don't go yet. No one can see you, or even knows about the little window here." Aladdin stopped, undecided. His pursuers might still be nearby, and the voice of the princess was as soft as a cooing dove. He sat down near the window. "What do you want to talk about with a poor tailor's son?" he wondered, for he knew very well that the voice belonged to the Sultan's only daughter. "Oh, just what it is like to be a tailor's son and live outside the walls." Aladdin understood loneliness, so he told her about his life, his hopes and dreams, and listened to her stories of life in the palace. It was with a start of surprise that he realized several hours later that the sun had set and that the stars had come out. He also realized that though he had not so much as glimpsed her face, he was in love with the Princess Sashir. "I must go now," Sashir said reluctantly. "They will be looking for me." "Wait!" cried Aladdin. "Come closer to the grill just for a moment." He pressed his eyes close to the opening, and for an instant he saw a lovely face shimmering in the moonlight. He sighed, feasting his eyes on her beauty. I know it is impossible, but I have never seen anyone so beautiful as you, and I know that my heart is yours." "Oh, Aladdin," she cried softly, "it is like magic. My heart is yours, too, but it is impossible. I am betrothed to a great king from the east. He will be here in a few days. I am the daughter of the Sultan, and I cannot choose for myself." "I know," he replied. "Let me touch your hand. It will last me a lifetime." She slipped her small hand through the grill, and Aladdin dropped a gentle kiss on the white fingers. Suddenly loud voices came from the princess's side of the wall. Marching feet came near. Aladdin sprang up in alarm. "Quick! I have delayed you too long. Run, Aladdin! The guards have seen me. They will find the window. Run!" With a last desperate glance at the window, Aladdin dashed out of the hidden niche and ran for his life through the darkened streets. Aladdin thought he heard voices and running feet behind him and despaired of reaching a place of hiding again, when a dark figure loomed up in front of him. Before he could stop, he crashed into the tall, cloaked figure who grasped him firmly by the arms. "Let me go!" he cried. "Here," said the deep voice. "A disguise may throw them off." He flung a hooded cloak over Aladdin, and the two stood calmly by as 4 very large palace guards ran past. They barely glanced at the two merchants standing so quietly beside the camels tied to a stall. When the guards had vanished into the darkness, Aladdin turned to his rescuer. Peering into the shadowed face, he bowed. "I am in your debt, sir. If it is in my power to do you some service in repayment—" "Well, well, as to that, we shall see," said the deep voice. "You are perhaps called Aladdin?" "Who are you? How do you know my name?" Aladdin wondered. "I am the brother of your father, Mustafa by name. I have searched for you for a long time." "I did not know my father had a brother," said Aladdin suspiciously. "He never mentioned you." "Alas, we had a falling out when we were young. I have been traveling in the East, making my fortune." Aladdin was too busy thinking of his hopeless love to notice the flash of green fire in the eyes of the stranger. "I have come home to make up the quarrel," the stranger persisted. "So if you will lead me to your house—" Aladdin forced himself to pay attention. "I have sad news for you, sir," said Aladdin. "My father and mother have both died this year, and I have only a small room to call my own. However, such hospitality as I have is yours." "Both dead?" cried the stranger. "What evil tidings are these? And you all alone, my nephew?" "Well," he continued, "if I cannot make up my differences with my brother, I can at least make amends to his son. Come, Aladdin, I am a rich man, a merchant with a lively trade. If you will come with me and apply yourself, I will set you up in business. You will no longer be all alone." Now Aladdin had finally caught the word rich, and it had set his mind to thinking. "If I cannot be happy in love, at least I need not live in dire poverty." "I will try to serve you well, sir," he began. "Call me uncle," said the stranger. "And for the rest, I have no doubt that you will do very well. Come then, we must be off, for we have a long way to go." And with that, the two set off for the desert, and Aladdin reluctantly pushed the image of the Princess Sashir's face into the secret recesses of his mind. As they rode along on the two fine camels provided by his uncle, Aladdin listened to plans for his future. He imagined himself in a shop selling fine carpets, silks, even jewels. Maybe among so many riches he would be able to forget the sparkling eyes of Sashir. "But first," said the merchant, "before we go too far, you must perform one small errand for me." "Yes, my uncle," said Aladdin, anxious to do well and justify his uncle's belief in him. "It is a small thing, almost of no consequence. Near here there is a secret opening in the desert floor, leading to a cavern. You must climb down into the cavern, and there you will find for me an old lamp, which I inadvertently left there. A trifle, unimportant, but I need to retrieve it. I have sentimental feelings for it." Now what Aladdin did not know was that the merchant, claiming to be his uncle, was in truth a great and evil sorcerer. The lamp, that small, unimportant trifle, was a magic lamp whose servant was a most powerful genie. The sorcerer was prevented by the magic which guarded the cavern from entering and retrieving the lamp himself. Deep in the enchanted cavern lay the lamp, and the spell which guarded it would only allow entrance once every 20 years, and would only remain open for a few minutes. If the lamp was not retrieved in that time, the cavern would shut, and anyone inside would be trapped. The sorcerer had used his dark arts to persuade Aladdin to get for him this most precious and wonderful lamp. Unsuspecting, Aladdin paid close attention to his uncle's words. "You will go straight to the lamp, pick it up and bring it to the opening. Do you understand?" Puzzled but eager to please, Aladdin nodded. "Yes, my uncle, an old lamp." "Precisely," said the merchant. "And here we are." Aladdin looked around, and as he stared at the desert floor, he perceived a metal ring lightly covered with sand. Take hold of that ring and lift the slab." The two dismounted, and Aladdin seized hold of the ring. The slab, though heavy, lifted easily enough, revealing a gaping black hole. The merchant produced a knotted rope, and tying one end to a rock, he threw the other down into the hole. "This should take no time at all. Make haste to bring me the lamp," he said. Aladdin did not much like the look of that black hole with the frail rope going down, but he gathered his courage and began to climb. "My uncle," he began, "how did you happen to leave the lamp in such a place?" The merchant's eyes flashed again, but he smiled. "Ah, Aladdin, such tales as I can and will tell you when we have more time. But for now, let it be enough that I did leave it, and that you are going to restore it to me at once." His voice had a steely ring to it, and Aladdin went down the rope with no further discussion. At first, the passage seemed totally dark. As his eyes adjusted, he could see the tunnel unwinding before him. The walls were twisted into strange shapes, as if a giant had carved them. The sound of his own heartbeat was loud in his ears as he went, mindful of the need to hurry. Soon he came to a branching of the way. He looked at the two tunnels with dismay. Which way? Should he go to the left or the right? His uncle had urged haste, and he was anxious to please his uncle. There had been a curiously unpleasant gleam in his eye. Which way should he choose? Left? Aladdin hurried forward. As he neared the end of the tunnel, he saw two openings in the rock walls. To the left, he could see a glittering pile of gold and jewels, the richest treasure imaginable. To the right, he could see what looked like a small oil lamp standing on a stone plinth. Again he must choose, the treasure or the lamp. Remembering his uncle's stern warning, Aladdin hurried along at the best pace the rough passage allowed. When he reached the end of the passage, he discovered, just as his uncle had promised, a lamp sitting innocently on a stone plinth. It was plain and not very clean, a very ordinary-looking lamp. It hardly looked worth all the trouble. However, Aladdin wanted to please his uncle, so he scooped up the lamp and ran back down the tunnel toward the entrance. Eager to be out of this dark and mysterious cave in the desert floor, he stuffed the lamp into his shirt, and, grasping the end of the rope, he began to climb. He could see his uncle's face peering down from above. When he was near the top, his uncle stretched down a hand. "Give me the lamp, Aladdin, and I will help you out." Now Aladdin would have been very glad of a hand up, but he could not reach the lamp without letting go of the rope. I have it safe here, my uncle," he said. "Help me out and I can reach it." His uncle's face grew dark, and a green flash filled his eyes. "Hand me the lamp, foolish boy," he cried. "I cannot, my uncle," Aladdin gasped, nearly out of breath. "I cannot let go of the rope. Help me out, I beg you." Still his uncle looked angry. Suddenly a grinding sound and a fall of sand in his face told Aladdin that the great slab was moving to seal the entrance of the cave, with him inside. "Worthless, faithless street rat!" cried the sorcerer, as the stone slowly, inexorably sealed the entrance. Drawing his cloak about him, he disappeared. Aladdin was so astounded he let go of the rope and fell down into the darkness, landing in a heap on an old rug at the bottom of the hole. Tiring of the darkness, Aladdin picked up the lamp and looked at it. "A lot of good you are," he complained. "All this for an old lamp, which I have no means to light, and a little light would be very welcome too." He began idly to rub the lamp, and nothing could have exceeded his surprise when the darkness was suddenly pierced by light. Issuing from the lamp, a flood of rainbow-colored light filled the cave. Smoke billowed and rose about him. Aladdin was too astonished to run or fling the lamp away from him or any other sensible action. He sat and gaped as the smoke rose and took shape until it took the form of a gigantic genie. Bending over Aladdin, the genie roared out, "What is your command, my master?" command?" stammered Aladdin. "Yes, yes, your command. You are the master of the lamp. Since you possess it, I serve the master of the lamp. So command me." Perhaps his recent adventures had finally made Aladdin cautious. He did not, therefore, rush into anything. "Is there any limit to how many times I may wish for something?" he asked. "Limit?" said the genie, puzzled. "Yes, you know, only 3 wishes, something like that." "No, no," said the genie impatiently. "That is an old wives' tale. Anything you command, I must do." Aladdin, still huddled in the rug, spoke with decision. "I wish to go home." In the twinkling of an eye, Aladdin was back in his poor little room, the rug clutched about his shoulders and the lamp still in his hands. The genie was nowhere to be seen. He heard a clamor from outside. Going to the window, he peered out. A great crowd had gathered, lining the streets and cheering with excitement. "What goes on, friend?" he called to a man. The man looked up. "Where have you been, young one?" he laughed. "You must be the only person in Samarkand who does not know that today the great King Khazad comes to wed the Princess Sashir. This is the procession of the bridegroom. See, here he comes." Aladdin thought his heart had stopped. Dismayed, Aladdin saw the splendid procession passing by. Elephants, camels, fine horses, dancing girls, and servants throwing gold coins to the crowd, all passed his window in a flurry of noise and color, and there on a black horse rode the bridegroom. Khazad was a tall man, wrapped in a black and gold cloak. He had a handsome, clever face with something familiar about it which made Aladdin uneasy. As Khazad turned his head, smiling at the crowd, there was a sudden green flash from his eyes. The sorcerer! It was the evil sorcerer coming to marry Sashir. No, no, it was not to be borne. He remembered the lamp, that old, worthless lamp Khazad had tricked him into risking his life to retrieve. Well, Khazad had himself been tricked, for it was Aladdin and not Khazad who was master of the lamp. He rubbed hard and waited for the genie to appear. As soon as the great form had taken shape, he demanded, "Quickly, turn me into a prince so that I may marry the Princess Sashir." A frown creased the genie's great brow. "Alas, master," he said, "my power has limits. A prince cannot be made, but must be born. I can make you rich beyond your wildest dreams, but I cannot turn you into a prince." "What good are you to me, then?" cried Aladdin. "The evil sorcerer Khazad will marry the Princess Sashir this very night, and I can do nothing to stop it." "Khazad?" asked the genie very softly, but his voice raised the hair on Aladdin's neck. "So, well, perhaps there is another way to help you. The Sultan must not know what we know about Khazad, that he is an evil sorcerer with an eye to trouble. We will disguise ourselves and attend the banquet. There all may be resolved." "Resolved? How?" demanded Aladdin. "I cannot tell you all, my master," replied the genie. "Trust me. If I can but get close enough to touch this sorcerer, I may be able to make the way clear for you to attain your heart's desire." With that, he waved a massive hand, and Aladdin found himself dressed in rich garments. The genie had shrunk to more ordinary proportions and was similarly dressed. "What about the guards? We have no invitation," said Aladdin. "I need no invitation," said the genie, and waved his hand. With a crash, he and Aladdin, clutching the lamp, disappeared. In the Sultan's palace, all was ready for the great betrothal banquet. The Sultan and his daughter Sashir were in the great hall, where Khazad was displaying the gold and jewels he had brought as gifts for his bride. As the genie had suggested, the Sultan did not know that Khazad was a sorcerer with designs on his throne as well as his daughter. "Come, my child," said the Sultan, drawing his daughter forward. Sensing her reluctance, the Sultan whispered, "No nonsense now. He is wealthy and powerful, a very fine suitor." I remind you of your duty as a princess." Sashir, looking at Kazad's handsome smiling face and outstretched hand, suppressed a shudder. There was a great roaring fire in the fire pit, and the intense heat from the flames made her dizzy. It seemed to her fearful imagination that Kazad was outlined in flame, as if he and the dreadful fire were one. There was something about him. She drew back from his hand. Green fire flashed in Kazad's eyes. So she would reject him, he thought coldly. Well, they would see. Sashir, seeing the cruel, cold look, closed her eyes. The smiling face of Aladdin, so tender and honest, rose in her mind's eye. "Aladdin," she thought desperately, "how can I marry anyone but you?" In that instant, Aladdin and the genie materialized behind a pillar in the great hall. "Now," whispered the genie, "we must get closer. Take care that we are not seen." They crept closer, dodging from one pillar to another, until they were an arm's length from the wedding party. Now you may be wondering what the genie has in mind. The spell which divided the king he once was into two parts, the evil sorcerer and the good genie, can only be broken if they touch. Alas, the sorcerer was very sensitive to the presence of the genie. His evil nature recoiled from the goodness of the genie, goodness which had once been his own. Kazad whirled around and saw Aladdin and the genie. The genie made a grab, but Kazad lifted his hands and there was a great flash of light followed by a crash of thunder. In an instant, Kazad and Sashir disappeared. Crying out, Aladdin and the Sultan dashed forward, but the princess and Kazad were gone. "Follow them," Aladdin demanded of the genie. "Alas, my master, don't tell me this is another case of magic having limits," Aladdin shouted. "Yes, my master. The spell which prevented Kazad from entering the cavern also protects the sorcerer's palace from me. I cannot use my magic to follow him there." There was an awful pause. "Of course," continued the genie, "we could use the magic carpet." "Where is my daughter? What has happened, and who are you?" cried the Sultan. "Magic carpet?" said Aladdin to the genie. "Yes, master, the magic carpet you brought with you from the cavern." "Where is my daughter?" demanded the Sultan. "She must be returned at once." "Well, fetch it here then," said Aladdin sternly, looking at the genie. "Fetch what?" cried the Sultan. Both Aladdin and the genie turned to him and said in exasperation, "The magic carpet!" In less than a second, the humble-looking little carpet lay at Aladdin's feet. The genie poured himself back into the lamp, and seizing it, Aladdin knelt on the carpet. "Take me to Kazad's palace," he demanded. The carpet lifted from the floor and flew round the astonished Sultan's head. "Wait! Where are you going? Who are you?" he cried. "I am Aladdin, and I love your daughter," Aladdin called back, and with that the carpet sailed out a high window and they vanished from sight. High in the star-filled sky, Aladdin flew on the magic carpet. Below him the silvery desert floor unrolled and vanished and became a starlit sea. The warm air grew cold, and he could see in the distance a great pinnacle of rock rearing itself above the waters. It was the fortress of Kazad. The sheer-sided mountain rose out of the turbulent sea, dark and forbidding, so tall it was forever crowned with cloud. Carved out of the top of the mountain itself, the palace was unreachable. No one could land a boat at the foot of those sheer, treacherous cliffs, or climb the cruel ridges of the mountain sides. No one could hope to enter, except by magic. "Find Sashir!" shouted Aladdin above the rush of the wind. Whirling once round the topmost turret, the carpet darted down into a lighted window and settled on the floor. The chamber was lit by a sullen red light from the huge fire pit in the middle of the floor. The heat from the fire was almost unendurable. Silhouetted against the light was Kazad, bending over Sashir, who faced him defiantly. Quickly, Aladdin rubbed the lamp. Before the sorcerer could turn around, the genie was before him. Kazad jumped back. The two faced each other, and the air grew very still. Kazad raised his arms suddenly, and a stream of flames issued from his hands. Sashir gasped and hid her face against Aladdin's shoulder as the evil-looking flames raced toward the genie's face. She was so frightened, Aladdin put his arms about her to comfort her, forgetting about the lamp. It fell unheeded to rest at the edge of the roaring fire. With a slight gesture of his hand, the genie sent a gray cloud spiraling upward. In an instant, rain cascaded down, quenching the flames. Snarling, the sorcerer again lifted his arms and hurled a terrifying lightning bolt toward the genie. This time, at the genie's gesture, the lightning bolt changed into a fall of sweet-smelling flowers which fell at Sashir's feet. Kazad, his eyes flashing wildly with green flame, drew himself up and threw his arms wide. A horrible creature, all teeth and cruel claws, hurled itself toward the genie. Before he could respond, the creature imprisoned his arms and began dragging him toward the lamp. "Aladdin!" gasped the genie. "The lamp! Quick!" Aladdin, seeing the creature stretching out claws to possess the lamp, understood. The sorcerer meant to imprison the genie forever. He dove across the shining floor, his outstretched fingers desperately reaching for the lamp perched on the edge of the fire pit. His fingers touched the lamp 1 second before the creature reached it, but he was unable to grasp it. His hasty fingers pushed it over the edge and into the fire. There was a great eruption of the fire, rising almost to the ceiling of the hall, billowing with evil smoke of many colors. The terrible creature evaporated as if made of mist, and the genie stood up, free. "Aladdin," he cried, "all is saved." He advanced on the sorcerer, suddenly shrunken and cowering as the fire died down to a sullen glow. "Little do I wish to have you back," said the genie grimly, "but to live as a man I must have all my nature, good and bad, together. It is the lot of being human." He reached out suddenly and caught the sorcerer in an unwilling embrace. The genie and the sorcerer stood so for a heartbeat. Then their forms wavered and grew misty as if melting. Out of the mist grew one figure, tall and kingly, with a noble, sad face and kind eyes. He looked around and smiled at Aladdin. "It is to you that I owe my release," he said softly. "In return, I think I can give you your heart's desire." Aladdin smiled sadly at Sashir and shook his head. "You see there my heart's desire. I fear it is not in your power to give. Did you not tell me you could not make me a prince?" "I told you once that I could not make you a prince with magic, for a prince must be born and cannot be made. And so it is. But you, Aladdin, were born a prince, for you are my son." Aladdin's mouth fell open, and Sashir gasped. "Before my youthful folly annoyed a great sorcerer, greater by far than the one you have seen defeated today, I was a powerful king, and Aladdin my only son. After my imprisonment as a genie, Aladdin was left to fend for himself in a strange land, part of my punishment. My son, I must ask for your forgiveness for causing you so much misery." "I was adopted by good people," Aladdin said, "but I was not a good enough son to them, I fear. I have learned better now." The king smiled and put an arm around Aladdin and Sashir. "Then it is time to be about some rather pressing business. I must retrieve part of my treasure. Splendid weddings are expensive." Aladdin and Sashir were smiling too. It was a day of unlooked-for joy. The king continued, "Then I must see what my kingdom has been up to for the past 20-odd years. I may have some work before me." Aladdin and the Princess Sashir were married, and they were very happy. The really magnificent wedding present brought to the Sultan by Aladdin's father, King Rashid, for so he was named, and the assurance that Aladdin was a true prince made him a very welcome son-in-law. King Rashid bestowed upon Aladdin enough treasure from the enchanted cavern in the desert to content a dozen kings, and after a time they went together to claim Rashid's kingdom. Aladdin and his father had many adventures, but that is another story, and so must wait for another night. In the meantime, it is enough to know that Aladdin and his bride Sashir, King Rashid, and even the old Sultan all lived in great happiness and contentment to the end of their days.